Sitting here at Schiphol in Amsterdam with two new friends, if I may call you like that.
Absolutely.
I just saw a lovely presentation of your new book. Thanks. It was refreshing. I wrote down some questions. I don't know where I have them, but my first question was, what is a depression? Can you sum it up in a couple of sentences before we go into depth?
Yeah, depression is a habit of emotional shutdown. It's predicated on an emotional collapse. We all avoid emotions, particularly strong emotions, in some way or other. And with depression, our habit of avoidance is to turn inwards, to numb out, to self-narcotize, to try and hide in order to protect ourselves from the strongest emotions. And that becomes a habit that's self-sustaining and leads to a whole pattern of shutdown. That's essentially what depression is.
You just said in your talk it's not an illness.
Correct.
I can imagine that some people
They'd be
argue
shocked
with
to
that.
hear that. Yeah, depression can cause illness, no doubt, because if you shut down emotionally, if you blank out the normal ups and downs of the emotional ride of life, it can be suppressing to many of the body's systems and can cause illness. But depression itself is not an illness. It can cause it, but not an illness. Same with mental illness. Depression can cause mental illness, but that's not essentially what it is. What it is a habit or pattern of emotional closure that then becomes self-sustaining and leads us into feeling, anything from blue to desperate and suicidal in life.
So there's also not such thing as a depressed person. Is that just a mask we wear, or?
Oh,
Hello.
okay. I was expecting you to answer.
Yeah.
So,
I'm opening with the question.
yeah, no, I would agree that people aren't their conditions, and that depression, in my direct living experience, is not only a suppression of emotion and a shutdown to emotion, but the effect of shutting down emotionally then affects our performance at work, our performance at home as parents, it affects us in our relationship, it affects that emotional closure, affects even our performance in intimacy and sexuality. And so that emotional shutdown has a biochemical reaction in the body that can have the effect of putting a blanket over our lives. And are we our blanket? No. There's a blanket happening, but we are not that. And so are people depressed? Well, they can experience having this blanket of shutdown in their lives, but they are not the depression.
I have a father who is addicted to temazepam, the pills you
Right.
used to take.
Yes.
And you feel so helpless, eh? You want to shake someone and say, stop taking that rubbish.
Yeah.
What is the right way to handle someone who thinks he's depressed, who acts like depressed someone? People tell me just be loving to him. That's the only thing you can do. Any more advice how to approach someone?
If you allow me a little promotion, give him the book and see if anything in there resonates with him. I think with anyone with depression, you can't force yourself on them. You can't intervene too directly because you're going to get some blowback. You're going to get resistance. Maybe a well-placed book can help allow him to see some of the patterns that he's running unconsciously and allow him to wake up to some different alternatives. The painful fact is that unless someone is willing to look inside themselves, there is nothing much any of us on the outside can do to affect that. So if someone is reconciled in their addiction, if they don't want to create change, if they're not willing to take some responsibility and to open emotionally to face what might be there, there is nothing anyone else can do. We can just be loving and tolerant at best, but we can't affect any change in someone else. So whatever you do, be gentle with it. Make a few suggestions, and give plenty of space. Space. For them to live the way they're living, for their karma to play out, and for them to come to a place in themselves eventually, hopefully, where they're willing to look inside and go, okay, it's enough of this, I'm willing to try something different. But they have to come to that decision themselves. We can't thrust it upon anyone.
In the meantime, I see my mother suffering with him.
Sure.
What's the effect of a depressed person, let's call it that, on... Yeah, it has its effect
Sure.
on the surroundings, on the family.
Sure.
So it frustrates me to see that the happiness of my mother also decays.
Course. Yeah, I mean, for her, I would also recommend her reading the book and using the work for herself, because it can only help her come home to a sense of peace inside of herself and wholeness, and feel compassion when she recognizes in him the patterns that are laid out so simply and clearly in the book. And also, if she's reads the book and does the work, he can, because I'm sure they came together because they loved each other in the beginning, and he can see that his beloved is feeling more real, more at home in her own skin, and he may feel guided to say, well, let me pick up this book, let me see if anything resonates in here. I mean, I truly do feel that any work where someone is going to have to go inside themselves to unearth what's stored there, to release it, to let it go, to forgive, to understand, it has to come from that impetus within the self for a change. Now, usually when someone's had depression long enough, it's painful enough that they hit rock bottom. And then there's a way, they don't know where to turn to get an answer because nothing they've tried works. So I would give the book to your mother, and she can only benefit from the work, which is very deeply healing and brings you to a sense of wholeness in yourself. And then she can even say, hey, this book helped me, maybe I don't know if it'll work for you. Why don't you read it, see if it resonates? But this gentle touch that you were advised, I think is a good advice, to have a gentleness about it, because if you try to push someone into anything, they either dig their heels in or they'll run from you, know. I feel that with emotional work, people have to come to it because their own heart, their soul wants what's on offer.
Greatly pointed, thank you. So the book is not for someone who is depressed only. It's also for coaches, teachers, someone who rides the bus. You don't have to be depressed to need.
No, that's for sure. If depression touches your life in any way with those you love, or if you experience stress or anxiety or burnout, the same basic principles apply here. And of course, if you're suffering from depression directly, then the work in the book is really tailor-made to get to the root causes of that and to heal at the deepest level. My prayer with the book is that it's a workbook that allows people to free themselves, to liberate themselves from the condition, not just to create temporary mood changes, not to analyze themselves, but to directly experience the freedom that is in the core of every human being, in the nature of every soul, and to wake up to the wholeness that's implicit in each of us. And that takes a little bit of courage. It definitely takes some willingness to stop and to inquire within, willingness to face some emotions that we've not faced before, the willingness to let go, the willingness ultimately to forgive. And those things are massively, massively healing in life. Yeah.
I haven't heard you, I heard you mention the word ego once in your talk.
Yeah.
Is ego the boogeyman? Is it the thing to get rid of? Or is it, what is ego to you guys?
Oh my God. Well, that's a big topic. I mean, we give seminars that are 8 days long on this very thing, and then I give another one that's 11 days long. And yes, but
is it a bad thing, ego? Let me ask the question.
It's what happens. It's said that we are born in this life, and well, at least science says, that when we're first born as an infant, we experience ourselves as this omnipresence of awareness, where there's a peace that is pervading all of existence. And even when Mother's hand comes before our eyes, we experience Mother's hand as being part of ourselves in this oneness, this field of oneness. And unfortunately, through the course of life's natural pains and trials, this awareness of our infinite nature gets covered over with a series of shutdowns and limitations and painful experiences, and we lose sight of the truth of who we are. And then what the journey allows you to do is to crack through this false identity. So let's call that the ego.
Mm-hmm.
This is the ego is really a protection device where we take up residence in this false notion of false self and then come to believe that's who we are. And what the journey does is it takes you down through the layers of the lies, the shutdowns, the strategies for defending yourself, and you eventually open into that essential nature that you came in as, the freedom that is here, the love that is your nature. And if you have happened, what's happening with us is you fall so in love with the truth inside yourself that you will do anything to clear whatever obscures you, blocks you, holds you back, shuts you down, so that the truth of who you are can live your life. So, yes, the journey is about freedom to be who you truly are in your essence, which is that infinite awareness that you came in as. And it just gives you the tools to clear the lies that we've all of us bought into.
The lies about who we are.
Yes.
I'm a man, I'm 44 years old, I'm bold, I'm overweight.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think I've been to that place where all those things don't matter anymore. But is there then still something to grab onto? Can I define myself then, or am I then infinite?
No, truth is not definable. When you awaken to the truth of who you really are, there is no landing place, there's no thing to reach for, there is no place that you can project expectations from. There's just the immutable truth of, I would say even the who, the what is prior to the donning of the robes, prior to the masks. You used the word mask earlier on. Prior to the lies, prior to the veils, prior to the pretenses, prior to the identification as somebody, as something, prior to all that is an absolute freedom that is not definable.
You start smiling when you talk about
Oh,
that.
I love it. I love it.
How come you love it?
Because I fell into that realization 20 odd years ago, and it's been the nourishing context in which my life has taken place since that time. And in that realization, life takes place, shit hits the fan, ups and downs occur, emotions come and go, crises happen and flare up and disappear, and yet I recognize the truth of what is untouched by any of life's circumstance. And that is the most extraordinary realization of this life stream.
I heard you talk about grace with another interviewer.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a beautiful word. I'm still flabbergasted by this saying in non-duality Advaita that all those things just come through you, or they are created with you. How does this book, does it feel like you both wrote it, or did it just appear? How does that work?
A recognition first arose with me that there was an impulse to write the book, that there was a need for it, and there was an urge, yes, I suppose, something like that, definitely an impulse. And then sitting down and putting out prayers that the book would be written with the highest and best purpose and would serve people. and then a letting go of the prayer and literally just watching what arose and got written. And so sometimes emotional, sometimes revealing things that my thinking mind didn't know, but made sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes not even knowing what was being written on a page until I went back and read through it. So like this, I mean, Brendan described it earlier on as a download, and I mean, I'm not sure I would use that exact word, but something like that. It felt like being used by life to give birth to something fresh, something new. And what I've recognized is the more that I get out of the way and allow emptiness to be the guide, to be the scribe, the more interesting, the more valuable it appears. What ends up on paper turns out to be. The more I get in the way, the more it's sticky and difficult and writer's block. It's a stressful way to write. And so just sitting, opening, letting go, and letting the prayer take whatever shape it will take. And then just almost like automatic writing. It's an interesting experience. Prayer, yeah.
How come? By prayer, I think of sitting like this and praying for sunshine tomorrow. You call a book a prayer.
Yeah, it rose from a prayer to reach out to people and to offer the alternative that freedom is available from a lot of conditions that are considered to be essentially manageable but not treatable. So that impulse, if you like, so the impulse, for me, an impulse, when it comes up through the body and you just let go, I would describe that as a prayer. I'm not sitting there going like this, dear God, I'm just allowing an impulse to upwell and to take flight.
Yeah.
That.
So it's not about visualization you hear about? Or
No, it's about recognizing whatever energy and impulse is coming up from within, recognizing that unmanifest energy wants to manifest in a particular way and giving it free rein to manifest as it will.
Yeah. You talk about the journey. I heard you just say a couple of minutes ago that you do the journey also quite often still in a month.
Yes, I do it every week.
Every week?
Every week, while I'm on tour.
And what comes up then?
We all of us have cell memories. In the spiritual world, they would call them samskaras or vasanas, karmic imprints stored inside the body. And in fact, in our Western society world, we know that science says when you feel a strong emotion and you repress it, it actually releases a quantifiable biochemistry into the bloodstream, which will go to certain cell receptors and block them. And if over time illness happens, it happens where the cells are blocked. And conversely, what's also known to be true is when we feel our emotions openly and freely like a child does, naturally, our cell receptors remain open and they can watch this in a laboratory. And so what the journey guides you to do is to open into this infinite intelligence, the part of you that makes your heart beat and your eyes shine and your hair grow. And it's at that deepest level of being you're guided to certain locations inside the body. And you go through a process of unearthing what's stored inside those cells in a very practical, very down-to-earth way to release the stored consciousness there, the old hurt, the pain, the shame, the blame. And you come to a place of understanding of what has taken place with you in those cell memories. And ultimately you come to a place of forgiveness, of forgiving God, forgiving life, forgiving yourself, forgiving other people. And somehow there's something quite radical and mystical that happens when you forgive. Because in my direct living experience, that's when you let go of the story. So that when new cells are born, they're born devoid of that old pain, devoid of that old consciousness, those old cell memories, as new regenerative cells. Now I know for a fact there's more than one issue stored inside this body, more than one cell memory. And I'm going to be a student of life till the day I die. And I feel it's a privilege to clear whatever holds me back, whatever obscures me, whatever shuts me down on any level of being, so that this radiant love that is all of our essence can live our life. And one of the things I've experienced, even though this freedom was realized many, many years ago, one of the things I've noticed, especially in satsang circles, well, you know, hundreds of thousands of people experience this infinite presence that is their own self. And they have, as you said, you've experienced this vastness of being where you feel like you are all of existence and all of existence is appearing in you. And yet with these cell memories, these karmic imprints, these vasanas, these samskaras, to me, if freedom is clear water, it's like taking food dye and pouring it into the clear water of freedom. And then satsang is offered, and it's tainted or filtered through the unmet issues of the ego, through the unmet vasanas, samskaras, that the people who are offering satsang have not yet woken up to exist inside. And so I feel I wouldn't have any right to stand on stage, honestly, unless I'm constantly clearing whatever obscures this freedom. Because freedom is who we all are. And yet the body carries a lot of baggage. And what the journey enables you to do is, first of all, wake up to your own enlightened awareness, to the infinite nature, but also to clear these unmet issues so that there's a deepening in the realization. And so I called it the journey because it is a journey. It's not like you wake up and that's the end of it. It's like you wake up and that's the beginning of it. And you spend the rest of your life clearing anything that might taint the waters of freedom, so that this freedom that is your essence can be expressed more wholly, more freely, more truly, more purely.
And you could say you don't have that much wrinkles, it also shines through you. Also someone like Eckhart Tolle, if you hear his age, you think, huh? It almost looks like time stops then when you do this, or because I just heard both of you past 60.
Yes.
I'm 65.
Yeah, I can put you next to people who are 55 and they look 10 more years older than you.
Right.
Oh.
So,
well, we love hearing this. I think after
course.
you've turned
Keep
60
going,
years,
But
after you've turned 60, you say, thank you, I love hearing this.
But it's also a biochemical thing that
Yes.
your body starts shining again, or
Yes, it is true.
yeah.
It is true. But for me, it is a constant journey. And I never, ever want to be so arrogant again, to say I've got it all handled. You know, that is a supreme arrogance. And my direct living experience is this is a mystery that will never be known. I will never fathom the depth or understand it even. And so I've had to learn to be content, to just live in this mystery, not understand it, and to recognize that these samskaras are here, and to do whatever I can to clear whatever shuts me down on any level of being. And yes, tremendous physical healing happens as a result. And yes, I love hearing that I look 10 years younger or more or whatever. And I do think it starts to glow, to shine in the eyes, you know, and in the skin.
In the presence.
In the presence,
someone, I once heard the comparison with a mirror. I think it's the same with what you guys mean. You clear the spots on the mirror so the love you are can be reflected everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any Advaita teachers you come from, a tradition?
Sure.
Yeah, can you name a few which make you
Yes.
happy if you only pronounce their name?
Well, Ramana Maharishi. It was interesting. I was first in India at an intensive with Guru Mai, where we were visiting in this intensive the different saints of Maharashtra, and we had 28 saints on the walls, and she said, just in meditation, she said, go inside your heart and welcome one of these saints. And so I closed my eyes, and none of the saints appeared, but this man with a white beard and white hair did. And she said, he will be your saint for life, or she will be your saint for life. And I came out of the meditation. Does this man even exist? Is it real? Is it born of my imagination? And 3 months later, in a spiritual bookshop, I saw his picture. And I realized that he had come to me unbidden. And he is the founder, really, of non-dual teaching of Advaita Vedanta, where it's who are you? You're looking into the nature of who you really are. And ultimately that led me to the feet of Punjaji, Papaji, who is the master who had such a profound effect on me, and who I feel is sort of the living transmission of grace, if you'll use it, that is the blessing given for the journey. And I could never have known, that the journey would reach millions, that it's in 49 countries, workshops are given in 49 countries and 29 languages, and all I feel is born from that grace, that is Ramana, that is Papaji, and he gave me clear instruction about how to offer what he considered to be the new energy medicine. And so he just said to me, Janaki, that's a spiritual name he gave me, he said, I guess history, mankind must be ready to start clearing the vasanas, the samskaras, and to realize their infinite self.
It's good you point out that there's work to be done, because when I first encountered non-duality, I thought, hey,
that's it.
That's easy. I'm not the body, I'm not the person, I'm not this,
I'm not the mind, I'm not the emotion, I'm not the identity.
Think, well, put that with the trash.
Yeah.
But no, there's no quick fix.
No.
No.
I think that the realization of your infinite nature is the beginning. And, I know I said this to you earlier, that I feel with the journey, you realize you are not those things. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. I'm not the emotions. I'm not the identity. I'm not my family. I'm not my culture. I'm not my job. I'm not all these things. I am this infinite presence within which all those things are appearing. And so we open into the truth of who we are, realizing we aren't that dream, and yet with the journey, the healing takes place within the dream, even while you know you're not that dream. So we're very much yogis in the world. We're not sitting in caves like Ramana Maharishi did, 27 years in one cave and 17 years in another. We are yogis in the world, where you can realize your infinite nature and all of life can be happening, but somehow this infinite presence is untouched by the emotions that come through, the life circumstances. The tumor was the least of what happened to me. My house burned down after that. My husband of 21 years fell in love with a woman much younger than me and left me for that woman. I lost my job. And by the time I started with the journey, I had lost everything. And yet still, this peace was untouched by all of the tumult and the tragedies and the dramas going on, where I had lost everything that is my life. And that's what I feel is true non-dual living.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to detach yourself from the world and transcend it all and be disassociated from it all and oh, I'm better than all of that. I don't feel it's that. I think what it is to realize you are this infiniteness and that the whole world is happening in you. And there's no avoidance, expectation, or defense against life happening.
Nothing is excluded.
Excluded. It's all. How can it be?
No.
If you
We
are
think we
everything.
can exclude the dog poo and the rain.
Yes.
The nosy neighbor. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the fight.
And well, that's exactly makes that person, in fact, be notionally in a concept of this.
Yeah.
But this actually has no problem with any of it.
No.
Because it's the dream just doing what the dream does in this vastness. And I love being allowed to experience the spectrum of life's emotions, experiences, all the while knowing I am not that. It's both and.
It's not this nor or that. It's the paradox.
Yes,
yeah. To bring it back to the book,
yes.
Could you say that depression, maybe, could we call it a gift to this? Is it, some teachers tell me.
It was for me, for sure.
Yeah, without crisis, no awakening.
Yeah. I mean, I'd not heard of the phrase at the time when I came to the journey first, but there is a belief that sometimes the dark night of the soul leads to the light, and that was my direct experience in the darkest of dark times. In surrendering into that darkness, I discovered the soul, I discovered myself, the light. And so, absolutely, we could say that. I'm not sure it's true for everyone, but I think it's a beautiful possibility for a lot of people.
So if you could choose, you would choose the same path you...
I am so grateful, Patrick. That's the honest to God truth. I am so grateful that life put me through exactly what it put me through, because I was lazy. I was one of life's avoiders and then strugglers. And without the amount of pain and pressure that I had in life, I would not have woken up. I would have found different excuses. I would have found different escape routes. I would have continued to strive and be unsatisfied with the product of my striving. And life brought exactly the amount of pain and pressure and misery that was needed to cause me to, I don't know what, put out a soul prayer to find truth, to find something that wasn't a temporary antidote, to find something that was lasting, to find something that was absolute in life. And so I thank God, life, universe for experiencing depression, because it caused me, it catalyzed me to wake up and live an entirely different and very blessed life.
Yeah, greatly said. One final question about emotions. I once read in a book, and I don't know if you agree, energy in motion, emotion. Is that just what it is? It's just like a wave of wind that goes through your system, or?
It can be that way. I think it's a little bit of a trite way to explain it. I think we've so many beliefs around emotions that create the appearance of an emotion being something when it's really not.
It's not a thing.
It's a biochemical shift that takes place in the body. Some of it can hurt, some of it can cause us bliss. And I think there are two things here. One is to realize that any emotion fully felt will lead you directly into an experience of the infinite. And the second, then when you realize that, is no emotion can own you, because who you are, what you are, is untouched by any emotional storm. And so either way, there's a benefit if you stop to directly experience, to tell the deepest truth about what that experience actually is, and to tell the deepest truth about who is experiencing, and what is untouched by any experience.
So we don't have to get rid of emotions.
Sure.
No.
No,
We
please
don't
don't.
have to park them somewhere.
Please don't do that either.
We don't have to meditate them away.
Indeed not.
No.
Just feel.
Just be.
Yes.
Just be.
To allow feeling or not feeling.
Okay, so when I don't want to feel my emotions, I get depressed. That's what I learned from you.
Well, when you use strategies to manipulate or manage emotions, you're going to end up in pain long term, some way or other. And if you collapse in on those emotions, if you turn inwards and shroud yourself against them, it can lead to depression for sure. So the antidote: stay open, embrace emotions, feel them fully without catharting, just naturally, to embrace all of life and to tell the truth about the deepest truth about what is experienced. That truth is shockingly liberating. It's never what we imagine it to be. And same thing, when we really inquire into who and what experiences, so who and what feels these emotions, it leads back to the same piece. It leads back to the same infinite awareness. So massive joke that is a blessing and a treat to wake up to.
Yeah. Did you experience tinnitus when you were depressed, or
I experienced a whole host of stuff.
that is away now?
Yes, I
Headaches.
experienced all sorts.
Yeah.
I mean, I became very physically dysfunctional at the worst of it. Was in huge physical pain. At times it felt like my body was plugged into the electric mains. It was really, desperately painful.
Yeah.
I was overwhelmed by life, not functional. Couldn't speak coherently, couldn't answer a question with a whole sentence. Like this, it was pretty extreme when it was at its worst. And that disappeared from doing journey work. And I've lived a pretty functional, generally positive, fulfilled, wholesome life. I've lived an entirely different life than I ever imagined was possible. And of course, in that, the shit hits the fan, the crises occur, the emotions are spiked, and my reaction is very different from what it used to be. So I just stay open, recognizing this too. This is just emotion. Be with it, sit with it, open with it, let it pass.
Yeah, and you emphasized during the talk that feeling emotions is not about expressing emotions.
It's very different.
Not about yelling at your wife or your neighbor or in the car, in the road rage.
Yeah, that's turning emotion into a behavior. What we experience is if you just sit and surrender to emotions in quietude, you don't need to make a fuss about it. You don't need to blame anyone else for them. Just stop the story that the emotions will take you deeply into the truth of yourself.
So nothing to be afraid of.
Well, fear is allowed, so fear would be another emotion. So yes, fear is welcome in it as well.
Okay, so I get
ultimately nothing to be worried about for sure. Yes.
Okay, but when I fear my emotions, I can just start with feeling.
Feeling the fear.
I'm sorry,
You have to go to the toilet. Of course, we're going to wrap up. Thank you.
Can I?
Of
I'll
course.
come back.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you've been quite busy all day.
Yeah, we've been busy.
Is the book translated in more languages than Dutch?
The book is in German. It's published under a different title in German. They published it under the name Goodbye Depression. In Dutch, with the title here, it's coming out in English on the 22nd of October, Light in the Heart of Darkness. And it's going to be published in Scandinavia, so I think in Finnish, in Swedish, in Czech Republic, Slovakia, Romania, France, and onwards from there, I hope.
Yeah. And can people come and watch a seminar or a conference? How do you call it?
Yes, we've got the seminars are called Out of the Blue, and one is taking place in November here in Holland, led by our beautiful friend Arnold Timmerman. I will be leading one in the UK. We've presenters in various parts of the world that lead the Out of the Blue seminar, and it's a gentle and full, deep experience of the work that's outlined in the book.
Where can we find the most information about the journey and your books?
You can look on thejourney.com or on my little website, which is kevinbillett.org. They've both got the listings.
Any teacher you want to thank?
The same as Brandon. We're from the same stable. Yeah. I mean, I love the teaching, non-teaching of Ramana Maharshi. I love the fact that there's no dogma. I love the fact that there's no instruction to do anything, to just stop and inquire and then be honest about the results of that inquiry and just let that be enough, because it's so much more than enough. And similarly with Brandon here, I sat at the feet of Apunjaji, Papaji, and my life has never been the same since that time. And his teacher was Ramana Maharshi, and with Papaji, he would just say, be quiet, be still, turn inwards and recognize the freedom that's always been here. Recognize the nature of the self as this that doesn't come and doesn't go. If it's coming and going in life, it's not real, it's not that. And who you are, what you are, is untouched by any tumult. And that has deeply imprinted me and created a radical awakening 20 odd years ago. And the same as with Brandon here. Yes, of course, the mind wants to extrapolate, the mind wants to own, or the mind wants to explain, the mind wants to know what's next, and then you just realize, okay, just a wave in the ocean, just a ripple on the pond, and what's unaffected by even the questions that the mind gives rise to. Back to the same stillness, back to the same infinitely still ocean of being.
Yeah. One more. Hey, there you are. Come.
Is it okay?
Yeah, of course. One question that pops up. You seem like very intelligent people. I once thought, depression is maybe just for those intelligent people who have so much capacity to think about things and to deep dive into and ask questions nobody asks. Do you think depression has anything to do with intelligence?
I don't, Patrick, no. I've experienced people with relatively low IQ with depression and people with very high IQ with depression. I think it's born from a conditioned impulse to avoid emotions by collapsing, by shrouding, by turning in and hiding from life, or cocooning ourselves from life. And that doesn't take intelligence, it takes some conditioned imprinting. So I think that the condition is one that can affect pretty much anyone.
Still, I haven't heard of a farmer with a depression.
For sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I go up to Sweden, and they have huge depression up there.
People who work in nature.
Yes,
okay.
yes. Yeah. People who work in nature, and because there's this feelingness that there's more to life, and they can't get access to it somehow. And even though they're working with their hands and in nature, which in and of itself is very fulfilling, that there's a feelingness internally of there's something more, and I don't know how to get access to it, and it can create a feelingness of pointlessness and not understanding. And so for sure, we've worked with people from all walks of life, and all ages, and doesn't matter whether you work in nature, don't work in nature.
It's not about background.
It's not about religion.
Education.
No.
Could we sum it up then that it's because the lie that I'm a person gets so, how do you call it? You feel it feels like a jacket. What doesn't fit anymore. That depression is a natural outcome of identifying with just being a person, that it's almost like natural that comes out of it, if you know what I mean.
I think it depends, Patrick. I think it depends on how we manipulate and try to manage our emotions. Does that type of identification potentially feed into it? Yes, of course it can. And I think the story is different for each of us. Ultimately, if we stay open to our emotions, if we allow them to naturally pass through the way that an infant would. They say that an infant is afraid of only two things: loud noises and falling. So emotions come, and an infant will feel and cry and open, and kind of whatever's next comes organically. And then, we learn to shut down emotions. We learn to run away from emotions throughout life, and it's that learning that apparently gives us a short-term benefit, but really costs us in the long term, including by creating depression in our lives for some of us.
Yeah, maybe just looking for one.
Yeah, I don't think it's that simple.
Answer or one cause of, well, because you said it's all about emotions that we can conclude.
Well, emotional shutdown.
Emotional
shutdown.
Yeah.
Emotional collapse.
I don't want to
and
feel
shutdown.
anything anymore.
Yes.
So I numb out, I shut down
Yeah.
as an avoidance strategy. That is at the core of it. Yeah.
I start drinking, I start using
Oh,
drugs,
yes.
Smoking.
smoking,
Google,
gaming,
Facebook.
internet, porno,
Yeah.
Yeah, everything, anything to avoid.
even spirituality maybe.
Yes,
be.
absolutely. I used to use meditation as a means of escaping feeling emotions that I didn't want to feel. And then I got that big wake-up call.
Okay. Thank you guys for this nice
Great
talk.
pleasure.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
we're gonna follow you and hope to see you again here in
Beautiful.
in
Thank you.
Holland.
Look forward to that.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Patrick.